Right, let's take you back to Parliament. The Standing Committee on Public Accounts, that scope, are currently hearing the audit outcomes and the financial performance of the SABC. I see a question from the EFF. Let's listen in.
In wasteful expenditure, the Auditor General found that leadership did not exercise adequate oversight responsibilities regarding compliance and related internal controls. As a result, the public entity failed to prevent irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure and did not implement effective consequence management. Hence, we have an unqualified audit with findings. My question is, why were proper and complete records not maintained to support investigations into regular expenditure? And what steps did the leadership take to prioritize consequence management? And how is support being provided to the units responsible for conducting investigations? Has the management outlined a clear and a credible process to investigate cases of irregular expenditure, particularly long outstanding cases, and ensure that appropriate action is taken? I will take the answers for those three, then I'll proceed with the other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I did promise that myself and the CEO will take some of the questions, and I failed to recognize that they are financial questions. With your permission, I will request the acting CFO to take the financial questions. Thank you. Chandai.
Thank you, DC, and thank you, Honorable Matwani, for the questions. So the context is there has been significant improvement, right? And when you're looking at irregular expenditure, especially irregular expenditure, it's multi-year. So you might have an incurrence on a procurement this year, but because that contract is multi-year for irregular expenditure. So you will see in our presentation the significant decline over the years and consistently so as those irregular contracts are running out or their contractual terms are expiring. We do manage and emphasize significantly so the need for consequence management and investigations. In our particular case, what the AG would have referred to is what we referred to earlier, that it has taken a bit of time, but that has been because of our diligence and the thoroughness in the process. If you look at also the feedback that we have provided, is that we have gone through about 99% of outstanding matters, but they had to go through internal investigations, engagement with National Treasury to go through all the way to the board. So we are in the final process of that, but what we can confirm is we have taken and investigated about 99% of historical matters. They are now just going through the administrative process up to write-off and board approval. In the paragraph as read from the AG also tends to be a standard wording. It's not that management is not keeping records. I think there were historical IE investigations relating to periods prior to 2018, that when the new team came in, they had to dig for some records, but it's not something that is recurring or consistent throughout the year. It reflects to that particular process. In terms of the support and engagement, that capacitation that we are providing the team, there has been significant investment in both the skill and the headcount to capacitate that team, and we have also brought in external help where needed in terms of home bodies to attend to that. And again, as testament to the audit outcomes and the improvement is that work is bearing fruit. It's just that we're taking through the work that we have now done through the administrative process of approval and finally write-off by the board.
I think these questions will be for the board members. On what basis did the board approve the write-off of irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024? And were the recommendations from the Loss Control Committee, Executive Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee sufficiently robust? Number two, what measures has the accounting authority or the board implemented to ensure effective consequence management and to prevent reoccurrence?
Thank you for that question, Member Matuan. And there's no one I'm Honorable Member Diabulel. So perhaps if just aligned to what the CFO has said, in terms of the write-offs that we have done as the board, these are in the actually all of them that we have sought even tabled before the National Treasury, because it has to go to National Treasury before for approval, and it has to get okay. It's mostly historical, right? It has been matters that even predate even the previous board, by the way. That's how long the write-offs are coming from insofar as the SABC. As a result, so if you look at the write-offs that have been, we do have committees both in management and at the board that are actually advising as to how to ensure that we do not have this further occurring in the future. But I will say confidently before this committee chair that the last at least 4 or 5 years at the SABC, there hasn't been write-offs that come within those financial years. But because it's SABC is still dealing with issues that are dating to 2018, 2017, 2016, and that's how long the matters that this board and the previous board has been dealing with. So from a consequence management, we have ensured that we have tightened our internal controls, but it keeps coming back that, as you saw even on the SIU investigations, that those matters will still continue to haunt us as the SABC. But we have put those in place. So can you put it on that there? So we have, if you check, I think slide 68, right? We have on slide it's not 67, the one that talks about the preventative controls that needs to be implemented. So what we've done, this happens even with us as the support, the compulsory training, right? That is being done insofar to ensure that we prevent reoccurrence of what has happened before. And we do also have, they have developed a knowledge and information management system that actually reminds us to actually undergo this compulsory training so that there is no reoccurrence. There will be simple videos that were demonstrated. The email will tell you, there's an email just to simplify the response to say, you have not done this training. You need to ensure that you are trained in this regard. And that's why I'm saying it's top-down approach. It's not only the people from the bottom. The board is expected to undergo the same training so that we do not have, as you would have seen, some of the activities previously also involved board members. So those are the activities that SABC has been implementing in the last couple of financial years. But it's a journey of change management, Honorable Matuan. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that you might be dealing with some historical issues, and it becomes difficult to try to change a culture of non-performance to that one of performance-based. Looking at the major contributing factors to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure incurred in the year under review, was the interest levied by the Sentech due to the SABC's failure to settle its full outstanding debt. The SABC has not been meeting its payment commitments to Sentech, resulting in recurring interests. I do ask, what are the underlying reasons for the SABC's failure to meet its payment obligations to Sentech, and how long has this non-compliance persisted? What financial and operational controls has management implemented to prevent further interest charges and reduce fruitless and wasteful expenditure? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Matuan. This I know I'm going to bosh. I'll ask the CEO to respond, and I'll tell you why. Because the debt of Sentech starts even before the bailout. So the issue of interest is something that each and every quarter were kept up to date. We even had a six aside as the board to try and mitigate how to deal with the issue of the Sentech debt, but it's accumulating each and every day. So, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honourable. The Sentech matter, I think, is well documented. To the Deputy Chair's point, the debt has been outstanding for quite a couple of years. It predates even the bailout itself. The reality is that the SABC's inability to pay the Sentech invoice in full is based on our financial position. And it's not because the SABC does not want to pay Sentech. The reality is that if you look at the SABC's costs, we are unfortunately in an industry where we have had costs. 80% of our costs are on three things: the salary bill, signal and distribution costs are the second cost, and the third cost then becomes the content acquisition costs. And that's 80% of our costs. So when, in fact, in the last couple of years, if you look at, in fact, in the last 20 years, the SABC has not really made a profit. If you really look at the financial performance, in fact, our costs far outweigh our income. That is what has happened. And therefore, even though the SABC pays Sentech, it's not because we're not paying them whatsoever, pays Sentech, but has been unable to pay the full bill of the Sentech services that are currently being offered to SABC, and also taking into consideration, I suppose, that 80% of Sentech's income actually comes from the SABC. We are aware, Honourable, that the SABC and Sentech has had a legal challenge in terms of the issue of costs, in terms of tariffs. The SABC has questioned the tariffs that Sentech is charging the SABC, and that matter is still not settled. In fact, it's in front of the tribunal and it's ongoing. So I think that's quite critical in this discussion that we have that context. But if you look at the payment that SABC has been making to Sentech, in the last year, that payment has doubled. If you look at the year ending 2023, I think SABC then was paying Sentech 20 million rand a month. In the year that has just ended, that increased to 51 million rand a month. And that's also dependent on the revenues that the SABC is able to actually receive in order to pay that. So when it comes to the issue of interest, the acting CFO spoke to it earlier to say that there has been a motivation that has been put through to Treasury, whereby we are asking for that interest not to be seen as fruitless and wasteful expenditure, because by its nature we are being charged by Sentech because of our inability to pay. And that is going to be reclassified going forward, that it's not listed as fruitless and wasteful expenditure, because it's actually not fruitless and wasteful expenditure. It's a consequence of the debt that is existing between SABC and Sentech. Thank you, Honourable. I hope I have managed to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. CEO, I will move over to the material irregularities, specifically the one dealing with the rental expenditure and the security contract that was awarded to a bidder that did not score the highest points in the bid evaluation process. Starting with the rental expenditure paid for office space that was not occupied, Has the judgment been handed down for this case? If so, what is the outcome of the judgment? And at what level of seniority are the parties responsible for the loss that was incurred by the SABC? And what consequence management steps were taken against those parties? And lastly, what are the prospects of recovering all monies paid, including the interest of 10.25%?
Thank you, Honorable Matuan. I'll ask the CFO to talk to it. I think it's on slide 56.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. So the matter did serve before arbitration and went through attempts at recovery. Two corrective measures were taken, and going forward post the initial contract, amendments were made to the contractual arrangements to eliminate that portion of the building from what the SABC was paying for. Internal consequence management were put in place against the individuals. I might not necessarily recall the specific outcomes, but as part of the resolution of the matter through AG, what I can confirm is we would have provided the evidence of all the action that had been taken by the entity to address the matter and to try and recover it. Hence, from the AG's own response is that the matter was appropriately addressed and appropriate action has been taken. On the security contract, as the contract itself was being executed on, the SABC ended up actually saving monies, and the expenditure was below what the contracted amount eventually, the actual amount spent on that contract ended up being lower than what was contracted and lower than what the second bidder had been. So in terms of material irregularity, the matter was addressed in that. The other procurement items in terms of irregularities would have been managed, but outside of the material irregularity framework.
Chair, and just perhaps on the consequence management, I know from the purposes of the HR committee, it was reported that one of the persons involved has actually, when there was disciplinary action that was supposed to be taken against that individual, resigned on the 11th, or a couple of days before the disciplinary hearing. That's the one part. Insofar as the security contract in itself, this is one of the matters that has been reported earlier on, insofar wherein the SIU is also part of, and it is still part of a court proceedings. And at this particular point, the SABC is embroiled in those court processes with the SIU in that regard. So that's where we are in terms of the material irregularities. You would have noted, Honorable Member Matuan, that although it was notified later in 2021, 2022, this even predates those dates of 2021, 2022. Some, I think the security one comes from 2016, 2017, at the time that we had the interim board. Thank you.
Thank you. Last round, Honorable Matuan.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on the person who resigned, because it seems it's a trend in the public service that people run away. But to run away, it doesn't mean that we cannot pursue you further. So are there any steps that have been taken to pursue the individual, maybe if there are any civil claims that have been instituted against that individual who decided to resign before the conclusion of a disciplinary process? Also, going back to the security contract, I want to check if SABC has a functional and a competent adjudication committee, bid adjudication committee. If so, how did a bidder that did not score the highest points get awarded the contract? Also, has the judgment been handed down following the court proceedings? And what was the outcome of the court ruling? What internal disciplinary measures did the public entity institute against the officials responsible for this non-compliance for this security contract? And what internal controls has the SABC's put in place since this occurrence to address some of the shortcomings which might have been picked up due to this in relation to its supply chain management processes? And lastly, what is the total financial loss incurred by the SABC, and what plans have been put in place to recover the funds? I think I'm repeating that one. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask colleagues, you guys confer a lot and it's audible. It's audible and it disturbs the proceedings. So when I ask that you decide who's going to answer the questions, that's what I was trying to minimize, but it's actually very disruptive. So please, can we not have that anymore?
Apologies, Chair. Well taken from our side. Chair, the first, I think, I'll focus mostly on the contract question insofar as the security. At this particular point, Honourable Member Matuane, is that indeed the SABC has a fully functional BAC, and historically, at the time we're in the SABC, that's the matter that is still before the court, is that the interim board, that's the allegation, that the interim board, as it was at the time, had oversight and controls with the interim board insofar as this bit of the security contract. It would seem, and I'm saying seem because it hasn't been proven yet in court, it would seem that at that particular time decisions were taken that were outside the scope and controls of the board, as of the interim board, as it was at this particular point in time. Remember, Matuane, as the board, we do not deal with such matters in the manner that it was dealt with in 2016, 2017. We only oversee insofar as plans and within the delegation of authority that has been put in place. So your question says, what controls have been put in place? The controls that have been put in place was to have an effective delegation of authority framework within the SABC. That delegation of authority framework has, amongst others, identified who in the value chain is going to be dealing with matters of bids, hence the question on bid adjudication. And once again, the matter has yet to be decided. This matter is the one that had to be joined. It's the one that involves, it says the Jaeli, I know I'm saying it incorrectly, contract, and other board members. So it is still in court. It has not been decided at this particular point. Even when the SIU came before yourselves last week, it was still one of those matters that was still outstanding. I will allow the CEO to talk to the next steps insofar as the rental contract when it comes to the person that has since resigned, what actions have been taken since the person has left. Thank you.
Deputy Chair, in terms of when it comes to these matters, there's two considerations: whether it's a criminal matter or there's an opportunity for a civil challenge. When there isn't a measure of success from a criminal matter, the SABC doesn't pursue it. But if there is a criminal deed that has been executed, then we actually go forward and we lay criminal charges, etc. And that has happened previously with various matters that we've managed. So from this perspective, this matter from a civil side as well, we couldn't lay civil charges against the individual. So currently, unfortunately for us, we were unable to literally go after the person who's left. But when the investigations take place and we realize that there is a criminal deed that has been done, we do go after it. In this case, there was not. But I think it's also important just to clarify that a thorough internal investigation did take place from SABC, and hence the conclusions that were made when it comes to this specific matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Beasley, I hope you're ready. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And your greetings, everybody, from the SABC, Deputy Minister, DG, my colleagues, press, everybody else here. So I think we all know, and it's quite well documented, that the greatest risk facing SABC is its going concern. Can the SABC survive without a government bailout, National Treasury loan guarantee, and increased ongoing grants from government? So can the SABC survive without another bailout?
Thank you, Chair. But just before the CEO comes, just in a nutshell, I want to say, yes, the SABC can survive. Apologies.
So that the broadcast can be clear.
Apologies. Coming from you. Thank you. Apologies, Chair. I'll start perhaps insofar as the question that has been asked, Chair, through you. The SABC, I need to first to contextualize that, yes, the SABC can survive without a bailout. However, this needs to be contextualized in the sense that any person that runs a company, a shareholder, has a responsibility to plow back into that company in order for it to function. The SABC, that's why from our side we've been looking at alternatives in terms of funding elsewhere. We do recognize that the SABC cannot survive without a government guarantee, right? Because we have to go with that to the market. Because that's the only, I'll say, currency at this particular point that say, because based on our balance sheet of how it looks like, the market expects us to bring a form of a government guarantee. And I know that the CEO is going to speak into detail as to what else we have been doing to try and alleviate that. I thank you.
Thank you for the question, Honourable. I think what's important here is just to go back to the SABC's 5-year strategy that I referenced earlier. I was very clear as well talking about the MTEF process and the cost of the public mandate, which is very critical. There is also, what's important is when the SABC is pushing, for example, for the resolution of the SABC bill, it's because the matter has become quite urgent. And I think it's critical for me to talk to that, because the current funding of the SABC is unsustainable. It would be remiss of me not to say that. We've spoken about the competitiveness in this industry, whereby there's new competitors that have entered our market, and we are genuinely unable to compete at the speed of change with our current funding, because it requires some serious investments for us to be able to actually be present and play a role when it comes to the new audiences that we are seeing. And currently, as I spoke earlier, is that our funding model is such that we have to be commercially competitive. So we currently are getting 4% in the form of a grant via the DCDT. What the SABC is asking for, and really our rallying call, is not a grant, is not a bailout. We genuinely are not in the market for a bailout. But what we are asking is that the SABC must be funded in order to deliver the public mandate. This is not unique to the SABC. Globally, public broadcasters around the world are funded. It's not unique to us. In first world countries, the numbers are enormous because there is a recognition of the importance of public service media, especially in a world, if you look at what the World Economic Forum said, is that the number one risk globally at the moment is disinformation and misinformation. We actually play a very critical role because from an editorial perspective, the quality that is required, the most important thing for us is the trust quotient. We can't let go of that. So in our current form, in order to be able to meet the demands of the public mandate, we are saying that the SABC has to be funded. And that funding obviously had to be addressed via the SABC bill. We spoke earlier to say the Broadcast Act is no longer valid for the type of innovation that we've seen and the disruption that we've seen in the media industry. So what we are saying as the SABC is the SABC has proven that it can bootstrap itself and has been continuing to fund itself with the limited options that we've got. But unfortunately, it's not sustainable for the long term because we are not investing in CAPEX, which is if we are talking digital transformation, ladies and gentlemen, we must invest in digital transformation. We can't just hope it will just happen by itself. So currently, yes, we are celebrating the growth of the OTT streaming platform, which has been paid solely from an OPEX. And if we had the type of investment required for growth, we would have grown threefold and been able to monetize it. So currently, yes, we've got the audiences, but we have not been able to monetize it because to monetize it, it means we must invest in the required technology to enable to do that. So yes, and to an extent which goes back to the issue of going concern, we have liquidity challenges simply because every rand that we make is already spoken for. So in order to free us up to be able to make better decisions rather than to make survival decisions, it means that there must be investment into the SABC. Yes, we are going to the financial markets to seek that assistance, but the financial markets have their key requirements in terms of their credit committees in order for us to meet the minimum threshold in order to be even considered for funding. And we've gone back to the department to say, assist us in getting guarantees from National Treasury. That's one. And obviously there's other measures that we've put on the table to say we are asking them to be considered in order to make the SABC sustainable. So that's a very important question that you've asked, Honourable. And what we are saying is that the bill is critical, the funding model is critical, and it's not unique to the SABC. We can look at globally, public service media organizations are funded by their shareholder, which is government. It's not unique to us. Thank you.
Thanks for those answers. So I do understand that if you do not get increased funding or government guarantee, you will have a huge going concern. So with the DG and the Deputy Minister next to them, is that forthcoming? Because it's pointless talking about things. Is that forthcoming? And based on my thing on the budget, the minister's quite clearly said that there's no money in the budget, and I haven't seen any more money. So it's pointless talking, and there's nothing concrete happening, because I think the truth needs to be told.
All right, so those are live visuals coming to you from Parliament. Alan Beasley is Action SA's MP, part of SCOPA, asking questions to the SABC about its funding and whether or not, in fact, the public broadcaster can survive without backing from the state. We heard from Nomsa Chabedi, the group executive for the SABC, saying, in fact, their call is not for a bailout, but for the public broadcaster to be funded. Important, of course, to continue watching that story, given, of course, the role that is played by the SABC.